months ago, most of my runs were under 5 kilometers, and 1 week ago, I ran 42.2 at the New York City Marathon. Here's how it all started, how the training went, how the experience in New York was, and what's next. Okay, first let's talk about how it all came to be. Because you're probably thinking, Natalie, you're a CrossFit athlete. How did you get into all of a sudden doing the biggest marathon in the world? So I guess it was in the summer. It was a little bit over 3 months ago. I got an email and it was an agency representing a premium beer brand, and they were talking about creating running content. Now, I was obviously intrigued. I had my series about not a runner and challenging that limiting belief with running. Last year, I did a challenge where I was running every day, and then I was working towards this year a sub 6-minute mile with a 300+ pound back squat. I had gotten the 315 pound back squat, so I was working a little bit more on the running side of things. And especially with being my off season in CrossFit, coming back from my shoulder injury, I was definitely doing a lot more running and trying to improve on that because it was just something that's been a weakness of mine for a long time. So I guess they probably had seen some of that content. They reached out to me, I reached back out, and in their next email, they basically said, we are representing Michelob Ultra, and we have the opportunity to send someone from Canada down to the New York City Marathon. And at first, I was kind of stunned. I was like, I don't know if I can run a marathon, but this seems like a crazy opportunity. I'll hop on the call. So I hopped on the call, and I definitely got really excited about the opportunity, about what they had planned for, the storytelling of the content, of documenting my training. And just the unique challenge of the whole thing, and especially learning about how big the New York City Marathon was and what a crazy experience it would be. It's also, Michelob Ultra is one of the brands that pledged a massive amount of dollars towards women's sports last year. They're doing a lot for equality in the sports space and in the running space. So they're definitely a brand that I was proud to represent. Now, I didn't say yes right away. I did take some time to think about it. I texted some friends. I texted some training partners. What was really holding me back at first was knowing, with my hopeful comeback to CrossFit competition post-shoulder injury, would it be possible to, dedicate 12 weeks of the year to running training? And knowing just my background in sports and being someone it's much easier for me to build strength, maintain strength, build power, speed, all that kind of stuff. When it comes to endurance, that's typically been a weakness of mine. So I thought I could treat this kind of like an off season where a lot of other CrossFit athletes are focusing on their strength numbers and kind of sacrificing some of their Metcons and actual workout performance. I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on my endurance and just build that zone 2 endurance. And when I kind of made my running training program, I looked at it in that way as like, okay, I'm going to do these mostly lower heart rate runs. I'm not going to do too much speed threshold work because pretty much all my runs were shorter track workouts that were all speed threshold work before that. So yeah, basically I was like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I think I have to do this. And so I said yes and basically committed to creating the plan to make this happen. Also, if I'm speaking fast, 1, that's just who I am. 2, I made the crazy decision to record this outside on a half-built deck, and it's cold. Okay, so one of my best friends had just finished the Ottawa half marathon, and she sent me some training programs when I asked her if she thought I could run a marathon in 3 months. And she basically sent me like this really, really beginner training program. It's just free online. I'll try to link it if I can find it. And what I did was I downloaded it. Then I looked at kind of some of my different training goals, like things I need to work on with upper body skill work, how maybe I could still incorporate some of my lifting, and basically made an Excel spreadsheet planning out, my runs for the next 12 weeks. Now, the problem was this training program was more like, a 4 or 5 month training program. Actually, probably a little bit longer than that. And so I only had, 12 weeks. So I basically had to look at the overall training program and restructure it to have me, peaking at the right time, still have that 2-ish, 3 weeks taper right before, or that 2-ish week taper right before the marathon, and still accumulate that volume, right? Like my longer runs were still only like 5 kilometers, and suddenly I had to build up to a long run of 33 kilometers that was only within like 10 weeks, because then you want to taper off and get your body in peak condition, rested, and ready to crush the marathon. So one of my biggest concerns, it was getting injured. Obviously, it's not recommended to increase your training volume of a specific movement, or especially with running, that fast. So that was why also I focused on more that zone 2 work. I knew, okay, I'm not going to really, all of a sudden become a way faster runner before this marathon. What I need to do is get my body ready to actually handle the volume of running that much. So I really focused on making sure I hit all those longer runs and just doing it at a pace that was sustainable, something that I knew I probably could hold for the marathon, and not pushing it too hard, because that's when you do risk injury. Now, before that, because I was training with the goal of running a sub 6-minute mile and then squatting over 300 pounds in the same day, and like I said, I had hit a 315-pound back squat before that. There's a video on that on my YouTube channel. I was used to doing run training and endurance work right before my heavy lifting. Actually, I was pretty much exclusively doing that, knowing that it wasn't necessarily prioritizing my strength gains, but I was prioritizing that stimulus of, getting used to the concurrent training, the hybrid training. Now, with this running, what I went in, and a mistake I went in with, was thinking maybe I could still do that with some of those longer runs. But as those runs got longer and longer, oh, and thank God the sun is coming out, that's nice. As those runs got longer and longer, I was not able to really be in peak lifting condition afterwards, right? There's just different ways that your muscles and your body reacts. I won't go deep into the science, of course, when you're doing those longer aerobic runs versus, the way that you need to be a little bit tighter, more explosive when you're going to do some of the heavier lifts. So I did have to spread out a lot of those sessions, really be smart about my training, and especially because I did have a goal of, giving my all to this marathon training, I did prioritize that in the sense that when I did those long runs, I usually took the day off to rest, recover, let my body adapt to the running, rather than, trying to push it and also do a lifting session and maybe not make optimal adaptations in either. On days I had shorter runs where I was just going to the track, those are days I would also go to the gym because I was pretty used to doing stuff like that. Now, one of the biggest realizations I made while running was just how stiff you actually get. When you look at the gait of running, your movement is not large. You're not moving through a huge range of motion like you do in the sport of CrossFit, like you do when you're doing Olympic weightlifting or when you're doing squatting and things like that. So I really had to start doing more mobility work. And even now, post-marathon, I am feeling pretty stiff, not that mobile. If you ask me to do a pistol squat right now, I'm going to need a lot of warm up. So that's something I'm really focusing on, post-marathon as I get back into CrossFit training, is opening up my range of motion again, despite the fact that I really did try to keep that range of motion and keep mobile throughout the training. I definitely sympathize with, triathletes and runners who then come to the sport of CrossFit and they struggle with, getting deep into a squat, with overhead mobility, things like that, because it is a sport where you're doing maybe 180 steps per minute in this small little range of motion. So my hips were getting really tight. Even my biceps on long runs, they would get super stiff and tight. You'd have to shake them out. My ankles especially, and my feet. And we'll talk more about some of those things, that aches and pains I had going into the marathon a little bit later. So one thing I really enjoyed during the process was trail runs. I actually really learned to enjoy trail runs. I think that's something that I'll stick with in my training is, going out with friends, going on the trails, something at a conversational pace. You're enjoying the views. Even I would listen to Rufus Du Sol in my headphones and go by myself, put on sunglasses. So it's a little bit dark and you're kind of trying to figure out where your next step is. You're really, focusing. You're not completely tuned out like when you're running on pavement or an open road. And I got into a whole other world on some of those long trail runs. So that's how my training started. I started running on the trails until I had some friends who recommended that since the marathon would be on the roads, I should probably get used to the impact of the pavement. So when I got to about the half marathon length of distance for my running training, that's when I switched to pretty much running exclusively on pavement, or there's a community trail right near here that's all hard packed gravel. Sometimes I would run on that as well. That's actually where I did my 100-kilometer ski challenge. And so running long distance on that actually brought back some rough memories of that crazy endurance challenge. But it also powered me through knowing, okay, I'm running 26 kilometers on this trail. I've done 100 kilometers on this trail before, so it's all good. I can make it through. Another thing I've talked about in past YouTube videos, and it's also a reason why with my podcast, I took a little bit of a break from August till, I guess, November, was that my grandpa passed away at the end of August. And I learned that pretty much around the same time that this marathon opportunity came up. And that was another factor in me deciding, was I going to do this or not? Was I obviously, I actually, this is the first time I've lost a grandparent, and I didn't know, how I would feel, how I'd react. It was obviously a really emotional. We knew that he had a month left when I first committed to this, and it was just really hard for my family. There was a lot of family commitments and managing any sort of training and just continuing on with regular life while dealing with that was really difficult. But in other ways, running was definitely something that helped me tune out and just be by myself on the trails and on the roads. And I think that really helped me a little bit with coping throughout it. And, my grandma, she messaged me even when I was at the marathon, just to how proud they both, he would have been. So yeah, that's something that definitely played a factor into the training. And, definitely thinking of him pushed me through, when it came to the marathon. So another thing that happened was, in September, I ended up traveling quite a bit. I had one kind of more fun trip where I went to Orlando, and it was so hot and humid. I really did not want to run. And especially thinking that the New York Marathon would have been really cold, I was like, is just training in this heat while I'm here for a few days really that worth it? So I did do like a shorter 5-kilometer run, and I did another 5-kilometer run inside the hotel, in a treadmill. And that was fine. So I got my runs in there, but no long runs. That would have been brutal. And there's not really the best paths and stuff to run there. And then went to a Washington Spirits game, NWSL game. That was awesome. My first NWSL experience on the way home, and then made it home. So that week, I kind of didn't get as many long runs, had to kind of try to make up for it in those few days when I was back home. But with all the walking I did on that trip, my feet were really sore, and I was kind of getting worried about managing those injuries. So I've broken my ankle snowboarding. I've had my other ankle sprained snowboarding. I still have a bone chip in one ankle that I never got surgery on. My feet, they have a lot of issues. I actually exploded my heel fat pad snowboarding before. That was like a year-long recovery process during my snowboard career, and that causes me to get like some plantar fascia issues on that foot when I'm doing a lot of high impact activities. It's getting a little windy here, so I'm getting a little cold. So if you hear my voice breaking, that is why. But yeah, so that was something I really had to manage too, was just my joints issues going into some of the training. So that was a really hard month because I had a few days at home, and then basically I left for, I think it was 10 days to Europe. Now that was partially a work trip, and then at the end there was like 5 days for fun. That was with my brother. We were visiting a ski brand out there and filming some content. And then we had 5 days in Italy, which was awesome, as well as we went to Austria to visit some family. So while I was there, I was convincing people. We had a crazy itinerary during the work trip portion. It was all really fun stuff. But yeah, it was really jam-packed with the restaurants, the events, like sightseeing, all these things that we had to, be on the shuttle, be with everybody to go to. But I did manage to convince some people to go on some pretty epic runs, short runs, nothing more than 5 kilometers, but just, up hills to castles and seeing cool things. So that was really fun. That was really enjoyable. And then again in Europe, I did the Michelob Ultra Night Run with my brother. That was again a 5K run. So we didn't really get that much time to, do a lot of training. I did some stuff in the hotel gym sometimes, but again, not that many long runs. So I really had to make up for it when I came home. And that was my worry with my feet issues and ramping up volume so high. So of course, when I got home, I jumped straight into a 26-kilometer run, and that was rough. That was a really rough one. I got really bad foot pain, my calf, my ankle, my Achilles, everything cramped up. I ran out of water during that race. During that run. So that was a really tough experience, and I was a little bit worried after that. I took almost like a week off of running, just recovering, and that made me a little bit not as confident going into the race, but I knew I still had to do another long run of like 33 kilometers before that. So I basically rested, recovered, did what I could in the gym, lifting different things to keep moving. And then once I felt recovered enough, I did this 33-kilometer run. Now that was interesting. I ran all around the town of Chelsea, Quebec, and there's a lot of hills. So I think in the 33 kilometers alone, there was probably more elevation gain than in the whole New York Marathon. So that was good training for some of those hills and bridges that New York had. But it was a rough run, just by myself, listening to podcasts. I had friends who tell me they drove past, they went somewhere, they came back, they saw me still running, especially running the same place over and over again. But we'll come back to that, because during the marathon, I actually thought a lot about that run. When I got to certain kilometer points or mile markers, I would think, okay, I just have to run around the town of Chelsea 2 more times. Or, remember when I would run this distance to my other friend's house and back, that's all I have left. Or, I have 1 mile left. Remember when I would do that mile out and back, full out from my house up the road to this other person's house and back. So there was a lot of really cool moments where I was thinking back to all those training runs back here at home during the marathon. I'm trying to remember if there's anything else I wanted to share about the training piece. Overall, I just think, there was. Yeah, so one of the biggest things about training that I realized, especially right before I left to New York City, and we're just about to get into the whole trip, the experience of the New York City Marathon, so hold tight, we're getting to the main part of the story, but what I learned was that I was more proud of training and the whole training experience, and that really shifted my mindset in a way of being, very results focused. So for example, if let's say someone reached out to me and said, hey, do you think you can run a marathon tomorrow? Going back with no training, right? Like, let's go back 3 months from now. I think I could. I could. I would have no idea about the pacing. Those are all things I learned during training. I would no idea about the fueling, a lot of the different things that went into learning how to run that far, the gear, all those type of things. But I think I could do it. I know I have the mentality to just push through a lot of things and go for it. And I have the sporting background to, have some of the fitness ability to jump into a lot of different challenges. But I think that there wouldn't have been necessarily something to be that proud of for doing that. For me, what I'm more proud of versus, 1 day of short-term intensity was 12 weeks of long-term consistency. So showing up all those days that I did not want to run, running while I was traveling through Europe with my brother, pushing through some of those days where, I just wanted to lift. I wanted to do the fun stuff of training that I enjoy, and knowing I'm sacrificing some of those things that I enjoy more, let's say, than running longer distances to focus on this marathon and do this challenge properly. So that was one thing that I knew when I first went onto the trip was like, I'm already proud of all the work that I put in. Like, no matter what happens, if I make the finish line, what that time is when I cross, it is like having committed to that training. And I think that applies to a lot of things in life where it's like, sure, you can show up to the gym one day and do like 5 hours of training, but can you like actually do 1 hour every single day, and show up day to day? That's what's going to make the biggest difference. Can you show up for what you want to do, your goals every single day, versus just one day where you're super motivated and then fall off. Every time I record something outside, there's birds squawking like crazy. All right, I'm losing my voice, so we're going to get into the New York Marathon experience. All right, so Michelob basically had, everything was accounted for. I just had to worry about, showing up and running. I showed up Thursday and the marathon was on Sunday, and I got to stay until Tuesday. So New York is one of my favorite cities. I had a friend who went to NYU and then worked at Deloitte in New York for a while. And so I would visit once or twice a year. So I think this was like my 8th trip to New York. And actually when I was 5 or 6, like I was senior kindergarten in grade 1, I actually lived in New Jersey for 2 years. So random, I was like kind of an American for 2 years. And then we moved back to Canada, of course. So I actually lived like 30 minutes outside of the city at that point. And in those 2 years, I actually only went to New York City once, but that was the first time I'd ever went as a kid, did a lot of all the touristy things, tour buses. And then when I went later in life, like throughout my 20s, I've been there eight times. Had my 21st birthday there. I did more of the things like that my friend would want to do, like the local stuff. I would go to different gyms. I would eat lots of food. Pretty much all my trips were based around what food I wanted to go to. She would always be like, oh, where do you want to go? Like this museum, this. I'd be like, yeah, sure. But like, I have a list of all the food spots I want to go to, the ice cream, the cookies, like this bakery, this pizza place. And so all the trips were planned around that. And this trip was kind of no different. I arrived on the Thursday, had a 6 a.m. flight. So I got there quite early. It was direct to Newark. I took the air train into the city, and the minute I got there, I basically had a mission of finding the best bagel in New York City. All the times I went there, I've been to all these different places, bagel places as well, but I thought it would be fun to like film myself going around the city and trying to find bagels and just reviewing them. Now, I forgot how much of a mission it is. New York City, obviously easy to get around with on foot or taking the metro, but it's, if you're going back and forth, obviously it's going to take a lot of time. So the first place I went basically straight from Penn Station. I had like a 40-minute walk up to the hotel because the hotel was by Central Park. And I was like, I just don't want to take my suitcase through the actual like metro. So I'll just walk it and get a bagel on the way. Got the bagel, was a pretty quick, easy experience. Went to this park to eat it, and some guy tried to steal my bag. So it was like, welcome to New York. After all those times I've been, I've actually never had that happen. So yeah, that was kind of crazy. And that bagel was a great bagel. It was my first meal of the day. From there, I walked all the way up with all my suitcases to the hotel. Thankfully, they had a room for me already, even at like 10 a.m., which was awesome. It's pretty rare. Usually you have to wait till later. And yeah, checked into the hotel, left my stuff. I kind of sat down and like rested for a bit because I had been up pretty early, you know, driving to the airport, going through customs, all that type of stuff. And then basically from there, I planned out, okay, like I'm going to go get another bagel once I have the energy to do so. You know, I kind of took like a quick power nap, and then I need to go pick up my marathon stuff. So I went to one side of town, the east side, to go get another bagel, and then ripped across all the way to the other side of town, the whole west side of town, to go to the conference center and actually pick up my bib, go see my name on the big, you know, board where it has all the runners' names, go through the expo and all that kind of stuff. From there, I wanted to go to another bagel spot. So I ripped basically down to the lower east side. It was a bagel spot that used to be on the road that my friend used to live on. She also used to live in Brooklyn, but this is one of the places that she lived. So I had been there before, been to this bagel spot, and that was actually by far my favorite bagel. And I had the same bagel actually like years prior. It was cool looking on my phone and seeing I had like the exact same bagel a while before. And then I ripped up to another bagel spot. Unfortunately, it was closed. And by the time I got there, all the other bagel spots had closed because it was like 5 p.m. at that point. So ended up going back to the hotel, ordering a poke bowl for Uber Eats. I wanted to take myself out actually to a nice dinner, but my feet were like so in pain. So yeah, ordered a poke bowl to my room, chilled. Then I did have to walk, like a mile to go pick up some running gels that I'd put on hold at a store, and then came back to the hotel. So that gets me into my foot pain. I don't know what happened, but the day before, I kind of hurt my knee a little bit in the gym. And thankfully that pain went away after a couple days. But my ankle and my big toe on my left foot, which is actually the foot that was giving me no problems throughout training, it was always my right foot, my right ankle. It was like really bad. Like every single step was painful. I was almost limping. I was pushing through pain. And it was basically that way until the day of the marathon. All of a sudden I showed up on game day, and when I actually started the marathon, that whole pain went away. So that was kind of crazy, but I spent, the whole time in New York City walking a ton on a really hurt foot. And I was like, I don't want to just sit in my hotel room, but I probably should. Should I be recovering? What's going to happen? And that was actually a big concern for the marathon, was thinking, could I do permanent damage? And, would I be able to push through 4 to 5 hours of running on this really painful foot where I'm going to feel it every single step. So I'm really glad that somehow resolved itself. Now my foot's still, it's a little bit hurting after the marathon, but it's actually not as bad as it was feeling before the marathon. Okay, so then the next day, that was really fun. I got to meet up with one of my friends, Reagan. She's playing hockey over in New Jersey, really close by. And we had become friends like through TikTok and social media. And so it was really fun to spend the day hanging out. And we went shopping, did again a ton of walking on that hurt foot. So then let's skip to Saturday. Saturday is the pre-run day. And we had a Michelob Ultra shakeout run with Brooks Running. And so we hit that. And I was really nervous going in because they scheduled I think it was 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. I was thinking, oh my God, we're going to run for 2 hours before the marathon. I have no idea. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going into this new sport, just, clueless. And what happened was it was a 2 kilometer, maybe 2.5 kilometer shakeout run at the pace I knew I would run the marathon. It was not a fast pace. So I was really happy with that, because with my foot and all those things, I was like, this is the only walking, running I'm doing. So we did that. We had a breakfast. The breakfast was bagels and stuff. I actually went for second breakfast afterwards because I was like, I want to eat more stuff. I got French toast and eggs and bacon, I think I got sausage. I just wanted a really big breakfast because I knew if I could load up on protein that morning, then probably the whole rest of the day I'll be doing more carb loading and just things that are not going to take too long to digest. I thought that after breakfast I would be done walking, but anyways, got convinced to go to Rockefeller and do a lot more walking. And then eventually I was like, I'm ripping up Fifth Ave back to our hotel. I'm done with this. I need to take a nap and rest. So went back to the hotel, took a nap, rested. Then I went to pick up all my Michelob Ultra gear. That was really awesome, figuring out what I was going to wear for the next day. Then I had to get dressed up and ready because we were going out to the Michelob Ultra pre-race dinner. And that was awesome. I got to meet Catherine Switzer, she ran, I think in 1967, the Boston Marathon. She was the first woman to ever complete the Boston Marathon at a time where women were not really allowed. They were not accepted. Marathons were viewed as just for men. So she entered this marathon, and even the race course director, or was it the director or the course official, tried to push her off the course. Now, she gave an amazing speech. I'll try to share some of it here.
What an absolute honor it is to be here with you all tonight on this amazing occasion, 50th anniversary of the New York City Marathon. And of course, it's the 50th anniversary of the Boston Marathon, the 50th anniversary of the first ever women's road race, and of course, the 50th anniversary of the landmark decision, the Title IX Amendment to the Constitution. The major things that took place for all of us, of course, men and women, okay? And what an honor it was for me to be chosen to be the spokesperson for you all tonight, and to have this amazing film made of me, and showing the amazing event that took place in the Boston Marathon back in 1967, where the angry official attacked me in the race and tried to pull off my bib numbers and throw me out of the race. And it was an event that changed my life. Not at the time, I was terrified at the time, but I made a really important decision. And this is hopefully will inspire you a little. I made the decision to finish the race. My coach was running with me, and I turned to him and I said, I'm finishing this race on my hands and my knees if I have to. But everybody's saying women can't do it, they don't belong, and they're going into places where they can't do it anyway, and I knew I could do it. Just like you all know you can do it tonight. You know you can do it, all right? So start slow and finish fast.
And it was just kind of inspiring for before the marathon. Then I got to meet her, talk with her, and it was just cool. I went home and learned more about her story and, posted about kind of her whole journey and how now it marks 50 years since since the women's division has been introduced to the New York City Marathon. So there's obviously a lot more amazing women and inspiring people who played a part in getting the women's division into these major marathons, but she was part of that movement. She was someone who broke that barrier, became the first woman to finish Boston. And then 5 years later, New York made a women's division. And now 50 years later, here we are. And that was also something that played into the part of me doing this run. That's something, Michelob Ultra, they actually have a run fund. And I think for next year, they're having people, you can apply. And if you want to run your first marathon and have it be the New York City Marathon, the biggest marathon in the world, as a woman or non-binary person, you can apply, and they're trying to fund to close the gap of the amount of women and non-binary finishers of the New York Marathon. So I think that's really cool. So anyways, at dinner, I ate pasta, and I think I was the only person who did not have a beer. I was like, what kind of sport is this? I came from national team snowboarding, which again, snowboarding, it's kind of more lax than a lot of other sports, but I don't think many of us were drinking beers the night before. At least I was not. And then CrossFit definitely wasn't drinking beers the night before, a big competition. So that was kind of really interesting to see. But I think, everyone who's part of the Michelob Ultra Team Ultra for the race, they're all, fun-loving, beer-drinking people. And I was just impressed. I was like, I need every ounce of, I was like, my tolerance, I enjoy, drinking a Michelob Ultra, drinking a beer every now and again for sure, with friends, chilling, but the night before, a race that I've never ran a marathon, I was like, probably not going to partake. So I didn't do that, but I think I was the only person who didn't do that. Went to bed a little bit nervous. There was also that time change. So set my alarms. I think I set 3 alarms. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get up, get ready. Got up, I think at 4 a.m. Actually, I got up at 3:30 a.m., thinking it was 4:30 when I needed to get up. And it was kind of cool checking my phone and being like, oh, it's only 3:30. I got to go back to sleep for an hour. Slept for another hour. Went to the breakfast, grabbed, an energy bar and stuff like that. But I had kind of my own snacks also packed for the marathon. One of the things is at the marathon, everything you bring to the start line, you have to leave it. You either carry it with you or it's gone. Like there's no way to get it to the finish line unless you like sign up for a specific thing where they can bring stuff, which I did not. So I had to kind of pack strategically of like only the things I would need. Like I didn't even bring my wallet. So we got onto VIP shuttles at 5:30 a.m. That was really awesome. We got a police escort across the bridge that we would then run on all the way to Staten Island. Got off. We had a VIP start tent with Michelob Ultra. So we had our own porta potties, our own food and breakfast, water, all those type of things. Chairs, which was really awesome, and shelter. So that was cool. So depending on the conditions, obviously it was nice weather, so it wouldn't have been so bad being outside, but we kind of were protected and sheltered. And if it was cold, they would have had heaters. So that was a really good experience. And then, I think in the morning of, I was just nervous, asking other people, like, should I start drinking my carb drink now? Should I, eat my last bit of food? When should I go to the bathroom? I think I went pee 5 times before the marathon. I was like so nervous because I was always wondering, like, how do marathon runners pee? Like, it's a long time to go without peeing, right? Like running, for me, 4 to 5 hours seems like a long time. Anyhow, during the marathon, I'll tell you, your body just like shuts down. Like I didn't even think about peeing. So, and even after the marathon, it took a while before I like broke the seal and went pee. So now let's get to the start line. So we had a VIP start. We started at the end of wave 2. So I think my official start time was like 9:51 or something like that. But we actually let all of wave 2 go, and we were running the top of the bridge because some people run like the under part of the bridge. And we actually let everyone go and then started like as a team, like Team Michelob Ultra. Obviously everyone then spread out and ran their own paces, but we were able to basically have no one behind us, no one around us, and like run that bridge kind of like ourselves, which was just a really cool experience. Another thing that was really cool is I made a playlist and I posted on my Instagram and asked anyone who was following me if they wanted to add a song or two. Some people added 30 and I had to like eliminate some songs because the playlist ended up being like 12 hours long. And thankfully I was not running for 12 hours straight, but I wanted to include everyone's songs, and that was something that was really cool. I had a really fun song that came on the bridge that just like made me feel like just a culmination of all my effort. Just felt like really alive as like a human being. I just felt like really good starting off the race, chilling, going at a good pace, having fun, taking some videos, listening to good music. And throughout the whole marathon, I was thinking back, every time I was struggling or whatever, thinking to us, who took time to like wish me well, to send me messages, to follow my journey, to watch my videos, and to like add music to my playlist. Like that meant so much to me. And it definitely really kept me motivated. Like every time I wanted to quit, I would like be listening to the music and think, these people are all watching my journey. They're supporting me. You added a song to this, like you took the time. And so like, I'm going to take the time to keep going, keep pushing, have that extra motivation. So thank you if you were one of those people, because it really meant a lot. So now we're into the race. We're having fun. We get across the bridge. We're feeling super good. We get into the crowds. We go through Brooklyn. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. I was taking a lot of time, weaving and high-fiving every kid that I saw, the signs. And then especially with Team Michelob Ultra, we had our names across our jerseys. So people would chant your name. That was a really cool experience. Also I knew people had messaged me who follow me, who like live around the area or were going to be in town, who were saying they're volunteering or they'll be there and they'll be cheering. So I try to like give a thumbs up to everyone who said my name. And that actually got really hard near the end when I was just in another world, just absolutely not in a good place. And I was just like trying to give a thumbs up, and I'm like running so slow. And I'm just hoping like that thumbs up in the end basically just meant, hey, like, yeah, I'm still alive in here, even though it doesn't look like it from the outside. So anyways, thank you. If you're one of those people cheering as well on the sidelines, if you're someone who went to watch the New York Marathon, it means a lot to all the runners. I know that's like the whole experience. It's just the cheers and the crowd and running through people. It was basically from the end of that last bridge, you basically have, the whole rest of the race is like people cheering as if you're at the finish line, the finish of an event, the finish of a race, but for the whole time. So that was just an insane experience. I had just my headphone in one ear, so I had like that music in the background, and then, all the cheers of the crowd and all the signs and reading all the signs. I saw a lot of amazing signs. I wish I could have taken pictures, but of course I wasn't going to run back after I saw the sign to take a picture, but it was really cool. I would say that the first, 33 kilometers of that marathon, or 30 kilometers, they were at the pace I definitely thought I should easily be able to finish a marathon in that pace without, feeling too rough. It was a pace I ran 33 kilometers in my training run, and that run was definitely like a light, easy run. I by no means finished the 33 kilometers feeling like I couldn't do an extra 9 kilometers. So it was definitely a shock to me when I hit the bridge. I think it was not quite at the 30 kilometer mark, but that's just because I know my pacing till then. But when I hit the bridge at the 20, I guess it was like the 15-mile marker, the Queensboro Bridge, and I threw up. So that was an interesting experience because I basically drank too much water too fast. And it wasn't that like my stomach was aching from the heat and humidity. By the way, it was like 25 degrees Celsius and 90% humidity. So it was something my body was not acclimatized to because I had been getting used to the cold, thinking that New York City would be cold because on average it's maybe like 12, 13 degrees Celsius usually, not so humid. So anyways, I got on that bridge, I was feeling good. I actually passed some people that I knew and was like, hey, how's it going? They're like, oh, you're doing so well, for your first marathon. I'm like, yeah. And I'm like cruising along, I'm thinking, the race is only just starting, right? I'm getting to halfway. I just got to halfway. I'm only I was feeling perfect. Like my pacing was perfect. I knew that I wanted to run that first half as if, it was just a warm up, and knowing that that last half obviously would get much harder. Like I was well aware of that. And I was like, I'm not making that mistake of going out too hot. But unfortunately, I had this goal of I never wanted to slow down. So when I would go through the through the hydration stations, I would just grab water and just chug it back. And I think what happened was in training, I always had a Camelback on, and I would just drink slowly, and you're not allowed a Camelback at the marathon. And so when you're drinking from the tube, you don't have air, right? And so when I'm just drinking like this, I got an air bubble in my chest, and I ended up throwing up my running gel. And I spent literally the last half of the marathon just trying not to throw up. So my heart rate actually dipped down. It just got lower and lower. So that it wasn't the heat or humidity or pushing too fast, because otherwise my heart rate would have been, climbing and creeping up. I think my heart rate was 150, and my max heart rate is usually 210 is my max. I obviously wouldn't have hoped to hit 210 in the marathon, but yeah. So then I was just getting slower and slower. So one, for the reason I only breathe through my nose. I only did nasal breathing. Just, I try to think of what I learned from the Huberman Lab podcast of double inhale through the nose, slow out through the mouth, just trying to calm that nausea. Again, my stomach had no issues. It was just that air bubble in my chest. So if I breathe through my mouth, I'd really feel it and feel kind of not the burps, but the hiccups. And so I was just trying to do that. Then every time I thought about even trying to eat a gel, I couldn't. I knew I was going to throw it up. I tried again later, and the same thing happened. So I basically had to commit in my head of I'm running this last half of the marathon with absolutely no fuel. And obviously as my pace started getting slower and slower, I'm realizing I'm going to be having to run even more time than I thought with no fuel. And so of course my body started cramping. It started going downhill. I was drinking a lot of water and things like that from the hydration still, trying to get some sugars and things in, but I couldn't eat anything. And my body was breaking down. And I was seeing people getting, who were done. They were with medical, they were getting carted off. They were, people were falling like flies because of the heat and humidity. And I was really worried as I became a little bit more delirious. I just could recognize that my body was getting to that point because I had no fuel. And I was pretty nervous that could have been me. And that was something that my parents said afterwards was they were kind of sitting at home, really nervous, knowing it's not that we're worried that she won't finish. So we worried that she could kill herself in the process, because they know that I just won't give up. I will keep going. And if I get to that place where I would get carted off, that would happen to me before I would just walk off. And so I'm really glad that, didn't get to that point. I was very close. Every single step was a mission. And some of the things that kept me going in that point was breaking it down. I would just keep thinking, another kilometer, maybe in a kilometer. I was sticking to that goal of never walking despite how slow my pace got. But I was just another kilometer. And it just felt so long. Another thing is my watch that I was wearing told me I got to 42.2, a marathon, when I still had 10 kilometers to go. So that was also really discouraging when it's oh, you should be there. And it's no, you're not quite. I think when I finished, it told me I'd ran 51 kilometers. So the pacing and everything was all wrong on my watch. So that did not help either. But that's when I really relied on the music and the crowds and everything to really push me through, as well as thinking, at the start of the marathon, I was thinking how fun it was, how easy it was. It was feeling so easy that I was I could do this all the time. I was in a mindset of I'll just come back and do this all the time. But when it got hard, that's when I was this is what I want, right? Do I want to finish and come to the end of the finish line and thinking this was easy? There was no challenge. No, I signed up for this knowing it would be a huge mental challenge. It would be a huge grind. And although it wasn't that grind of just thinking, the normal grind where you hit a wall, you got to push through, it was, the nausea, the not having any fuel, But that's what I want, right? You want to get tested with different things, I think, as an athlete. And so I was trying to remind myself of that. Like, when you finish this, Nat, like, you're going to think about how hard and everything you just pushed through. Like, what you're doing right now is some of the hardest experiences of your life. And only you know that. And only you know what's going on right now. And so when you finish, like, you're going to be so freaking proud that you pushed through that. And so that's how I felt. I crossed the finish line. I flexed for the photo. If you see the picture of me just before I flexed, I was looking really rough shape. I was just in a bad place. Finished, got my medal. Then I was supposed to walk through the corral, meet up with people and stuff, but it's like a long walk. So I actually I just felt so bad. I was almost going to go to the medical tent because I was thinking, if I haven't had fuel in this long and I still don't feel like eating, I still have these hiccups. Maybe I'm going to need like IV, getting intravenous fuel or something. But I saw people who were in much worse shape than me. So I thought, okay, no, I'm going to just let them take care of these people. I'm just going to lay in the park for a bit. My whole body seized up as I knew it would. And then I basically limped my way after like half an hour of chilling down over and then to the after party. I went to the Michelob Ultra after party. They had like an ice cream bar, metal engraving. They had all this food, obviously all the drinks, and I couldn't eat any of it. I was so bummed out. I sat there for about 6 hours, just sat. Maybe not quite 6 hours, but almost. And I was just really bummed out because I was so excited to eat everything in sight after the marathon, and I couldn't eat anything. So that was definitely a bummer. And I got really bad hiccups that felt like my ribs and my sternum were breaking. Like, that happens to me sometimes, and it was bad. So yeah, definitely struggled through that one. Thankfully, though, I had signed up for a massage that was at the Michelob Ultra post-race party and a stretch out. So those definitely helped with my recovery. So definitely thank you for that. Took advantage of that, even though I couldn't take advantage of the food. Then we were walking home. All of a sudden, I got hungry. I felt like not just my appetite, my appetite had came back, but I couldn't eat anything. I tried to eat even a pizza pasta at the after party, and I just felt nauseous again. I was just sitting there literally for that whole time, again, still trying not to throw up, breathing through my nose, trying to relax. But I got hungry and I was like, okay, I need what can get me the most calories quickest? So I stopped and got 2 pieces of pizza, was able to wolf those down. Then I called my parents, talked with them for a bit on FaceTime, called my aunt, talked with her for a bit on FaceTime, and then basically went to bed and rehydrated and all that kind of good stuff, and had a warm shower. That felt really good. Next day, walked a ton, felt pretty sore, definitely my ankles, knees, feet, everything was pretty stiff. The back of my knee, where my hamstring inserts, that was pretty rough on my right side because that cramped up during the race. But yeah, I walked around, had a good time, went out that night. Then Tuesday, I had a flight middle of the day, got home, got picked up my dog, saw my dad. My mom was at work when I picked up my dog, so I didn't see her quite right away. And yeah, that's pretty much what happened with my race experience. And I'm super grateful for Michelob Ultra for making this happen, that having the VIP experience and everything that went on in New York and being taken care of and just getting to focus on running was absolutely incredible. It made my first marathon, I think a memory that can never be topped. I will definitely never forget this experience. Yeah, and so I'm just really, really grateful and just really honored that I had the opportunity to do this in my life. I was talking with my grandma yesterday, and she was like, for your age, you've done so many things. And I think as I go through them, in my mind, I'd think of them as no big deal. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just going to run a marathon. I'm going to go do this. Now I'm going to do whatever. And, I'm trying to sit and reflect on it a little bit more because, in my mind, I'm like, oh, when I'm 80 years old, when I'm my grandparents' age, I'm going to think back and look back on these memories, but I think it's important to look back and reflect on them now. And so that's what I'm doing, even just with recording this. And yeah, I definitely, it's true. I have done a lot, and I'm really honored to be able to do that. And I want to keep making great memories and doing crazy things and challenging myself. And again, having great stories when I'm 80 years old. I'm sure I'll be still telling the story and talking about it and how crazy it was. So yeah. Okay. So now I've been getting a lot of messages of what's next? What's next for me? So, it's getting back to CrossFit competition. That's been my goal all along since I hurt my shoulder. There was a point I never thought it would happen when I first hurt it in 2019. I needed a mental break. I've talked a lot about that in different videos and different podcasts, but as I went through the recovery, I realized how much I miss competing, how much potential I think I hope I still have. I'm getting up there, but yeah, that's my goal. Is I want to get back to competition and show that I can after my shoulder, and I still think I have it in me. So that's what's going to happen. I'm going to, have fun snowboarding this season as well. Just getting out on the mountain every week for fun with my brother and friends and stuff like that. Yeah, so I think definitely that. I think I still have that goal, that sub 6 mile and the 300-pound squat, plus pound squat in the same day. So that's going to be part of my training as well. I'll definitely keep documenting, keep sharing that journey. But right now, yeah, I'm focused on the CrossFit season and, getting some strength back throughout the marathon. I felt like it was hard to keep upper body muscle mass. Your body just doesn't want to keep it on, especially your body just doesn't want to keep it on when you're doing all that running volume. Lower body, I think, right now, if I was to test my lifts, it's definitely lower than what it was before, but I think it'll come back quickly. I don't think I lost too much muscle in that aspect, but yeah, I'm going to be, working on those CrossFit weaknesses, getting back into CrossFit form, competition shape, and yeah, I'm excited for that challenge. So thank you all for the support. Thank you for listening to this long-winded story and recap of my marathon journey. Thank you, Michelob Ultra, for making it happen in the first place. I'm excited to see the videos they put together as well of the experience, and looking forward to the next challenges and doing more crazy things like this. So yeah, definitely challenge those limiting beliefs. If you don't believe that you can run, if you're worried about a certain time, that was a thing for me too, going into a new sport and knowing I would not be good at it. I would actually be below average. That's really hard for me as a competitive person. So I got to challenge that limiting belief as well, accepting that my time is definitely not the fastest. There are people who aren't high-level athletes who can definitely beat my time in the marathon for sure. So, yeah, that was a really good experience for me as well. Just mentally, resetting that mindset a little bit, and still super competitive as a person. But I'm just really proud of, what it took for me to get to the start line and what it took for me to get to the finish line. So I'm actually getting out of this cold and going straight to my friend's house to have an ice bath. So maybe I need to warm up a little bit in between. So bye.